My mom secretly took my college essay and gave it to my sister who got a full ride. I was told mine was too weak and lacked emotion, but my own words were praised in a national interview under her name. A month later, I was invited on stage and froze. Because she was in the audience grinning. This has wrecked my trust in my family. I feel violated, humiliated, and erased. I've never felt more alone. It's been eating at me for months, and now I'm at a point where I don't know if I should just cut contact altogether or find some way to speak my truth. But I also don't want to ruin my own life in the process of exposing them. I'm stuck. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment things fell apart. The shift wasn't dramatic at first. It started as small little cracks that widened quietly. When college application season came around, I poured myself into my essay. I really poured myself into it. I've always been the quieter one in the house, the too serious one. I don't dress flashy, I don't party, and I've always kind of carried my own weight emotionally. My younger sister, Brielle, was the opposite: loud, bubbly, all highlighter pens and Pinterest boards and chaotic energy. My mom adored it. I was never jealous of her, not until now. I spent 3 weeks writing that essay. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. before school to work on it when the house was quiet and my thoughts were clearest. I wrote about feeling invisible in my own family. I wrote about the pressure to be low maintenance and the resentment that builds when people assume you don't need help because you don't complain. I was vulnerable. I took real risks. I cried at my desk more than once. When I finally showed it to my mom, she didn't say much at first. Just skimmed it and said, "It's fine." A little distant. I remember that sentence exactly. A little distant. As if I hadn't just carved myself open and offered up my heart for critique. "You might want to dig a little deeper," she said, not even looking up from her phone. So I believed her. I started writing another version, doubting myself the whole time. I hated the rewrite. It felt fake. But I submitted it anyway, thinking maybe she was right. Maybe my real voice wasn't good enough. Then things got strange. Brielle suddenly started talking about Colombia. She had never mentioned it before, not once. She was always aiming for something local, something fun. But now she was obsessed. She mentioned the writing program. How competitive it was. How she just had this essay idea that came out of nowhere. I was suspicious, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Until one night, I accidentally opened the wrong Google folder on our shared family laptop. And I saw it. Her name on my essay. Not a copy. Not inspired by. Mine. Word for word. Except she had replaced my name in the story with my and me. I sat there for what felt like an hour, just staring at the screen, not even blinking. Then I confronted my mom. She was sitting in the kitchen, drinking tea like it was any other Tuesday night. I walked up and said, "You gave Brielle my essay." She didn't even flinch. "She needed it," she said. "Not sorry. Not surprised. And you'll write something else. You're good at that. You'll be fine." It was like I'd been kicked in the stomach. She didn't even deny it. Didn't bother lying. Just confirmed it as calmly as if I'd asked if she did the laundry. "You stole from me," I whispered. "You stole my voice." She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You're being dramatic." I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My dad was at the other end of the kitchen, making toast. He looked over, but didn't say a word. Just turned back to the counter. That was the moment I realized no one was going to stand up for me. Not even the man who was supposed to protect me. He just let it happen. Brielle got into Colombia. Not just got in, she got a full ride. She came home screaming, crying, jumping around the house. My mom popped champagne. I locked myself in my room. She came by later, slid a cupcake under my door like I was a dog. "Don't be bitter," she said through the crack. "You should be proud." That was 4 months ago. Then came the interview. It was a national radio piece on Voices of the Future, and Brielle's essay had been selected as one of the most impactful submissions of the year. I didn't know until I heard it in the car while riding with a friend from campus. I hadn't told anyone about what happened. I didn't know how to. But then I heard the host read a line out loud, a line I remembered writing in my room at 2 a.m., crying over my keyboard. Being quiet doesn't mean you're content. Sometimes, it just means no one's listening. My friend turned to me and said, "Wow. That's powerful. Sounds like something you'd write." I didn't speak for the rest of the ride. After that radio interview, everything around me started to feel warped. I started having dreams where I was screaming in a crowd, but no one turned their heads. I'd wake up with clenched fists and this hot, buzzing shame behind my eyes. During the day, I pretended like I was fine. I went to class, I joined clubs, I even started a blog just to give myself somewhere to put the words that were still mine. But at night? I'd lie in bed and replay that sentence over and over, "Don't be bitter. You should be proud." There's a different kind of heartbreak that comes when the person who's supposed to lift you up becomes the one who steals from you. It's not just betrayal, it's erasure. Like you were never there in the first place. I didn't talk to my mom or Brielle for a while. I'd respond to texts with one-word answers, and every phone call went straight to voicemail. When I came home for winter break, the house looked exactly the same, but everything felt different. Colder. Quieter. Brielle was buzzing around like she always was, talking about her classes, her professors, the city. She dropped names I didn't recognize and acted like the entire universe had rearranged itself around her success. And my mom? She was walking taller. Like she had produced a genius and the rest of us should just feel lucky to bask in the glow. Then one night, I caught Brielle alone in the living room scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled like nothing had ever happened. "Are you still mad?" she asked, not even looking guilty. Just mildly annoyed, like my silence was inconvenient. I didn't answer. She sighed. "It's not that big of a deal, Talia. I mean, you always say you don't like attention anyway." That sentence burned. I felt it crawl down my spine and settle behind my ribcage like a fist. "I say that," I said slowly, "because people like you don't leave room for anyone else to be heard." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Okay. Drama queen much?" I just stood there, staring at her. My sister, the girl I once built blanket forts with, used to sneak Oreos into my backpack when I had a bad day at school. But that version of her was gone. Or maybe she was never real. I walked away without saying another word. But inside, something was changing. It wasn't anger. It was for a purpose. Back at school, I buried myself in my work. I stopped trying to fix things with my family and started focusing on rebuilding myself instead. I met with professors, took on extra writing workshops, and started volunteering at a local youth center. I entered essay contests, and slowly, my voice started finding an audience, one that didn't wear my face or borrow my story. One day, I got an email from a professor in the English department. She'd submitted one of my essays, with my permission, to a national student writing competition. It was a long shot, she said, but worth trying. I didn't tell anyone. Not my roommates. Not even my friends. I just waited. And then I won. The prize wasn't just money or recognition. It came with a speaking slot at a creative writing conference hosted at Columbia University. Yeah. Columbia. When I got the email confirming my spot, I stared at the screen for 10 minutes, hands shaking. It felt like the universe had looped back on itself, handing me a mic I wasn't supposed to have. And I knew I couldn't just show up. I had to arrive. For myself. For the girl who stayed up writing until her fingers ached. For every moment I sat in silence while someone else wore my voice like a costume. I prepped for weeks. Not just for the speech, but mentally. I knew Brielle might be there. She was still in the program, still active on campus. The odds weren't zero. But I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going there to start a fight. I was going there to tell the truth. When the day arrived, I boarded a train to New York wearing the blazer I bought with my first freelance check. I had my speech printed and folded in my bag, but I didn't plan on reading it word for word. The conference was held in one of the main auditoriums on campus. Bright lights, rows of folding chairs, name tags with academic titles I'd never even heard before. I sat backstage with the other speakers, nervous grad students, professors, and a few published authors. Me, a girl from Madison with a story that never got its credit. When the moderator called my name, my legs felt like they weighed 100 pounds. But I walked to that stage like I belonged there. And then, as I turned to face the audience, there she was. Front row. Brielle. Next to her? My mom. She had that same proud little grin. The one she wore at Brielle's Columbia acceptance dinner. The one that said, "We made it." Except this time. I wasn't part of that. For a second, I panicked. My vision blurred. My throat dried up. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. But then I saw someone else. A woman in the third row, scribbling in a notebook, nodding along as the speaker before me finished. And then a young guy behind her with a lanyard, looking right at the stage with anticipation. They weren't here for Brielle. They didn't know my mom. They were here for stories. And this was mine. I didn't look back at Brielle again. Not once. Not while I walked to the podium, not when I adjusted the mic, not when I took that first shaky breath. I looked at the audience. I looked at the strangers. And then I looked at the speech in my hands and folded it closed. I was going to read something I prepared, I began, voice quieter than I intended, but I changed my mind. A ripple of surprise moved through the room. But I kept going. There's something different I want to talk about today. Something I think a lot of writers understand, but we don't always talk about it publicly. I paused. My hands were still trembling, but now from adrenaline, not fear. It's about what happens when your voice is taken from you. When something you created is something born from your pain, your joy, your private moments get taken and used by someone else. When it's passed off as theirs. When it wins them awards. Applause. Praise. I let the words settle in the room. I knew every syllable was hitting like a wave. I wrote an essay once, I continued. It was personal. Honest. Painful. I submitted it for college applications. Or I tried to. But I was told it wasn't good enough. That it lacked heart. That I should write something more emotional. Some people chuckled knowingly. Others shifted in their seats. I believed them. So I rewrote it. Threw out what I had. The version I submitted was bland. Sterile. A cardboard cutout of the real thing. I got rejection after rejection. I thought maybe I just wasn't meant to be a writer. I leaned into the mic now. My voice steadied. Then, months later, I heard my original words on the radio. I heard gasps. Audible ones. Read aloud in a national interview. Words that I wrote. Words I remember crying while typing. Only they weren't being attributed to me. They were being praised under someone else's name. Someone closer to me than I could ever explain. Now people were murmuring. There was a strange tension somewhere between shock, anger, and sympathy. But I wasn't done. I wish I could tell you I stood up immediately. That I called it out. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. I let it eat away at me. I convinced myself maybe it didn't matter. Maybe being a writer meant giving up your story to someone who could say it louder. I swallowed hard. I could feel my mother's eyes boring into me. I could feel Brielle's stiff posture from 20 feet away. But I'm here now. And I want to say this clearly. I took one long breath. You can survive being overlooked. You can survive being minimized. But when someone tries to take your truth and wear it like it's theirs, you don't owe them silence. A hush fell over the auditorium. I opened the folded paper I'd brought, not my speech, but a single page. The final paragraph of the essay I'd written all those years ago. I read it aloud. I didn't say it was mine. I didn't have to. The people in the room understood. The applause started slowly. I thought maybe it would stay that way. But then it grew. Louder. Steady. Unmistakable. I stepped down from the stage, heart pounding, and the first person I saw was a professor in the front row with tears in her eyes. She mouthed, "Thank you." I didn't look at Brielle. I didn't look at my mom. They were statues in a storm that wasn't theirs anymore. This time it was mine. I left the auditorium before the applause stopped. Not because I was running. I just didn't need to see their faces. Let them sit in it. Let them feel what I had felt for months and years. The silence. The humiliation. The weight of knowing someone else had been credited for your pain, your effort, your story. The shame of realizing they never even thought they'd get caught. I didn't look behind me once. I didn't check to see if they were following. I walked out into the bright, cold air of Morningside Heights and kept walking until the conference building was blocks behind me. I wandered through campus for a while, ironically, the same campus that had celebrated her for my work. It should have felt bitter. But it didn't. It felt like closure. I checked my phone eventually. Missed calls. One from my mom. One from Brielle. One text, from my mom, that simply said, "We need to talk." That was completely inappropriate. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt done. I turned off my phone. The fallout happened slowly, like ink spreading in water. The next day, a clip of my speech made it to social media. Someone had recorded it. People started commenting first on small writers' groups, then academics, then media accounts that lived for controversy. Speculation swirled. Some people tried to guess who the someone close was. Others didn't care, they just resonated with the message. Within a week, the story was everywhere. A columnist for The Atlantic published a piece about intellectual theft in families, how often daughters' work is co-opted, diluted, or dismissed. A podcast I listened to religiously reached out and asked me to come on. They didn't ask for names. Just my perspective. I said yes. I never mentioned Brielle. Never outed her. Never used the word plagiarism. But I didn't have to. People pieced it together. Some of her peers recognized the essay. A few of them had even quoted it back to her during workshops. Someone posted a screenshot of my winning contest entry next to a paragraph from Brielle's application essay. It was damning. I didn't plan it. But I didn't stop it either. Columbia's writing program reached out to me, not Brielle. They asked if I would consider speaking at another panel in the fall, this time about ethics and authorship. They said I had a voice that mattered. That sentence alone nearly undid me. I never got that from my family. Never once. And now? I was getting it from strangers. Back home, things were unraveling too. Brielle lost her mentorship slot in the honors writing track. She wasn't kicked out, not formally. But her status changed. Invitations stopped coming. Professors gave her that kind of careful, cautious distance reserved for someone whose mask had slipped. My mom called more. Her voicemails went from sharp and defensive, "This is all a misunderstanding. You've blown it out of proportion," to guilt-laced pleas. I didn't think it would go this far. "You're hurting your own sister." Then finally, to brittle apologies that didn't sound like apologies at all. "I'm sorry you felt betrayed." "No, I'm sorry I betrayed you." I never called her back. I didn't delete the voicemails either. Some wounds deserve to be remembered. In private, Brielle sent me a message. Just one. "I didn't know what to do after Mom gave me your essay. I froze. She told me you were rewriting it anyway. I didn't think you'd care that much. I'm sorry. That was it. I didn't respond. Not because I hated her, but because I knew she still didn't understand. It wasn't about the essay. It was about me. It was about every time I was told to be quiet, to be small, to sit in the shadow of someone louder because it was more convenient that way. It was about being raised in a house where my silence was praised while my effort was ignored. Where my writing only had value when it wore someone else's name. And it was about reclaiming that. Not with revenge. Not with destruction. With truth. I started getting emails from girls I'd never met. Messages from women in their 30s, 40s, even 60s. People who said they had lost their voices to parents, partners, institutions. People who said that hearing someone like me speak gave them the push to write again. That meant more than any applause ever could. I never sent a response to Brielle's message. Not because I couldn't find the words. But because for the first time in my life I didn't need her to understand. She could sit with her discomfort. She could live with the truth. And my mom? She kept trying, on and off, over the months that followed. She sent awkward cards, bland gifts on holidays, and once even mailed me a framed photo of Brielle and me as kids. As if nostalgia could act as an eraser. As if love without accountability still counted. I didn't block her. I didn't send her long, angry letters. I just stopped trying to make her see me. And that felt like its own kind of freedom. I graduated with honors. Not at Columbia. Not from a name-brand school my mom could brag about at dinner parties. But from a college where I worked for everything, earned every inch of ground I stood on, and rebuilt my voice brick by brick. My professors nominated me for a postgraduate fellowship in nonfiction writing. I got it. I used the grant money to travel for the first time alone. I wrote about women who'd been silenced and softened and overwritten. I wrote about mothers and daughters and the damage that happens not with fists, but with quiet dismissals and stolen words. Those essays turned into a book. It didn't become a bestseller. It didn't hit every list. But it was mine. Completely, unapologetically mine. And when it was published, I sent just one copy to the return address on one of my mother's old envelopes. I didn't include a note. The title said everything she needed to hear. Years later, I was invited back to that same Columbia conference. This time, I was the keynote speaker. I stood on that stage with no nerves, no trembling hands, and I spoke about the long road to reclaiming your voice after someone else has tried to bury it. After the speech, a student came up to me and said, "How do you know when you've healed?" I thought about it. Then I said, "When you no longer need them to say sorry." I keep that answer close. Healing isn't about getting back what was taken. It's about building something so deeply you're so unshakably rooted in your truth that no one can steal it again. And I did that. Not out of spite. Not for applause. But for the girl I used to be, the one who thought her voice only mattered when someone else said it louder. She was always enough. Now the world knows it too.